Should the Pittsburgh Steelers trade for Patrick Surtain II? I'm going to tell you why this guy right here might be the number one trade target for the Pittsburgh Steelers before the trade deadline this year. But before I break it down with you guys on today's edition of Steelers Talk, make sure you click that subscribe button and join the fastest growing Steelers community here on YouTube. We're going to be having breaking news updates every time Omar Khan makes a move before the NFL trade deadline. So if you want to stay up to date on everything the Steelers do here before the deadline, do me a favor, click that subscribe button. Let's get into today's show. The 2023 NFL trade deadline is just a couple of weeks away. And for me personally, when I look at the landscape of both the Pittsburgh Steelers, what their financial situation is, what their roster situation is right now, to me, the only guy, potentially the only star player for sure, that is worth targeting on the trade market, at least in my opinion, is star cornerback Patrick Surtain II. Now, the Steelers are kind of in a tough spot right now. Let's be honest now. The Steelers don't have many major holes, and then the holes that they do have right now, like inside linebacker, offensive line, they're either A, really tough to fill on the trade market because there's just not that many guys available, or B, you're not going to want to trade for a guy and then give a big contract to somebody in a lower value position like an interior offensive line spot or an inside linebacker spot. So really the only thing that makes sense in terms of going and getting a marquee player on the trade market this season, at least in my opinion, is if you use significant draft and financial capital here to go get yourself a legitimate number one lockdown cornerback for your secondary for the next decade here in Pittsburgh. And really the only guy that fits that description, in my opinion, is Patrick Surtain II. Now, we break down the financial situation and why this might work for the Steelers if they wanted to pursue a trade for Surtain, is that right now they've got just over $3 million in 2023 cap space. That's not all that much, but the contract situation for Patrick Surtain is actually pretty favorable. He's still in his rookie contract, and much of his $20 million that he got when he was drafted in the first round by the Denver Broncos just a few seasons ago is that $12.6 million of that came from a signing bonus. So that means Denver is on the hook for that signing bonus until his rookie contract is up. If the Steelers trade for him, they will not be on the hook for that signing bonus. And right now, his base salary is $940,000. And because he's already played a portion of this season, it's going to be even less than that for the Pittsburgh Steelers if he ends up getting traded. Now, he does have a roster bonus that the Steelers would be on the hook for next year because he does have 2 years left on his current deal. But I think the biggest roadblock to potentially getting a deal done here is that the asking price is going to be absolutely monumental. You look at the type of trade piece that Patrick Surtain is. He's still extremely young. He's arguably a top 5 corner in this league right now. He's still on his rookie deal. I mean, you look at the kind of value that this guy brings to the table, it's probably 2 first-round picks is what they're going to want. I mean, I know Denver is probably on their way to a full-scale rebuild under new head coach Sean Payton. They've started off this season extremely slowly. I mean, this team is looking like one of the worst teams in football, but Patrick Surtain is one of those rare pieces on this Broncos roster that actually looks good moving forward, and I really do think it's going to take at least 2 first-round picks in order to get Patrick Surtain in a Steelers uniform, and I'm really not sure if Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin are going to be willing to pay that price, and it could even be more than 2 first-rounders. It could be 2 firsts and a player like Patrick Peterson, something like that. So my prediction going into this trade season here is that the Steelers aren't going to be making any big moves. So this Patrick Surtain rumor really intrigues me. I would love to have a lockdown corner here in Pittsburgh. Lord knows that we could use it. We've got some good edge rushers there. Of course, we've got a great safety in Minkah Fitzpatrick, but you're kind of missing that true lockdown number one guy. I think right now the Steelers are going to hope that Joey Porter Jr., who's had a really good start to his 2023 campaign, his rookie season here in Pittsburgh, is going to develop into a Patrick Surtain type of talent and be that number one true lockdown guy moving forward. And then they're going to hope that Levi, Wallace, and Patrick Peterson can hold down the fort in the time being as that veteran presence. And honestly, if I'm looking at the situation in just a couple of weeks, the trade deadline is going to be happening, and I really don't see the Steelers making any real big moves. Now, I do think that they could potentially be sellers at the trade deadline. I've got a couple of Steelers trade candidates I'm going to break down with you guys here in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Odds Are. And let me tell you, man, Odds Are has completely changed the way that I sports bet, and I'm making a lot more money because of them. If you've ever wished that you could navigate the betting field with the confidence of a pro, then Odds Are is perfect for you. They're not a sports book, but they're a sports betting advisor that you've always needed. It's like having a playbook for smarter bets right in your pocket. I've been absolutely loving the experience, and I think you will too, especially since Steelers Talk listeners get a 30-day free trial. So when you go into the Odds Are app and you go into a game, a specific game, you're going to see something like this. Now, with this kind of situation, they have a kind of a red light, yellow light, green light system. So red light, so the red on there means don't bet. The analytics, the AI that Odds Are uses says do not make that bet. Yellow, you can see it on the New York Giants on the bottom there on the over-under. That means it's an okay bet, but you do it if you feel strongly about it. But the analytics don't say it's necessarily a great bet. But then if it's green, as you can see there on the over of Green Bay from this Monday Night Football matchup, for example, that means it's a great value. The AI says that it's absolutely a deal that you cannot mix. Green means go, which is absolutely why I love using it. Super easy to use, and it makes you such a better sports bettor here on the open market there. It makes you more money as well. So go ahead, elevate your game today, and join the smart betting revolution today. Go get it at oddsr.com/NFL Daily. That's oddsr.com/NFL Daily. Now let's get into some Steelers trade candidates, just in case Omar Khan wants to sell some pieces here at the trade deadline. This will really only happen if the Steelers lose a couple of games here heading into the trade deadline. I'm not necessarily saying that that's going to happen, but in case, here are some players here. These are the two guys I think are unlikely to be traded. I think that Alex Highsmith and Diontae Johnson are two names that get thrown around on Steelers Twitter a lot, and I really don't think that there's any possibility that Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan decide to move either of these guys. They just signed Alex to a massive extension. They clearly love him. He's still pretty darn young, and he completes one of the best, if not the best, pass rushing duo on the outside along with T.J. Watt for this defense. It's the heart and soul of this Steelers team, especially this year with the offense struggling. So I really don't see Alex getting traded for pretty much anything at this point. And then Diontae, I know a lot of Steelers fans, they're very annoyed with the way Diontae Johnson plays football, right? He tries to create yards after the catch by running backwards. He's got concentration drops, all this different stuff, right? But Kenny Pickett, I think, said it best in his press conference this week. He can't wait for Diontae Johnson to get back on the field because guess what? A wide receiver that gets open at the rate that Diontae Johnson does is a quarterback's best friend. And you look at a guy like Diontae, somebody that, based on the analytics, is a top 5 route runner in the National Football League in terms of creating separation. That is something that's absolutely huge for the Steelers offense. And also it's going to open things up for George Pickens because we've seen since Diontae's gone down with that hamstring injury, George has actually seen a lot more double teams, and that's definitely not good for Kenny Pickett and the Steelers' offensive success. Can't wait to see Diontae Johnson back on the field when he gets back from that hamstring injury. And really, I think the more likely trade candidates when the time comes, if the Steelers decide to be sellers here at the trade deadline, is going to be one of these starting cornerbacks, right? With Joey Porter Jr. looking the part right now, looking like he could be a legitimate starter down the stretch for this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I mean, you could look to potentially trade one of these corners, right? You look at Patrick Peterson, hardy veteran, someone that's played in the playoffs. There's a team out there potentially that's in need of a corner that would probably give up a 5th, 4th, maybe even a 3rd-round pick to get the services of Patrick Peterson here. Plus, he's got 2 years left on his deal. Getting rid of him at the trade deadline would open up some cap space for the 2024 season. And after the Alex Highsmith extension, the Steelers are probably going to need a little bit of cap space heading into next year. And then Levi Wallace, if the Steelers by the trade deadline, for whatever reason, are pretty much out of the playoff picture. They lose every single game, let's say, before the trade deadline. Levi Wallace is going to be a free agent in 2024. So if you feel like you're not going to need Levi's services here towards the end of the season, I would say go ahead, see what you can get for him on the open market. I think there's some teams out there that run very zone-based heavy defenses, like the Buffalo Bills, for example. If they're in need of some cornerback depth, they might take Levi Wallace back. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what the Steelers decide to do. But overall, I really expect a pretty quiet trade deadline for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Should the Steelers buy and get a player maybe like a Patrick Surtain on the trade market before the trade deadline? Or do you think they should sell and send away a player like Patrick Peterson or Levi Wallace before the deadline comes? Type B if you're going to say buyers, or if you think that we should be sellers this trade deadline. Go ahead, type S for me down there in the comments section. All right, so before I say goodbye for the day, guys, let's go over some of the latest injury updates and some good news coming out of Pittsburgh. Let's start with Diontae Johnson, who, of course, had that really nasty hamstring injury against the 49ers there in Week 1. It's looking like he is trending towards a return in Week 7. And along with DJ, I think DJ is going to be a huge addition to this offense when he eventually comes back. I think the third down offense is going to be a lot better. I think it's going to open things up for George Pickens. And I overall think this passing offense is just going to be better with Diontae Johnson on the field for the black and gold. But then there's also some other players, some nice contributors that are looking to make a return after the bye here in Week 7. And Anthony McFarland Jr., the third-string running back and punt and kickoff return man. We know, guys, we know how bad Gunnar Olszewski is as the punt and kickoff return man. Getting Calvin Austin III potentially in there as a punt returner, and then Anthony McFarland back there once again as the kickoff returner will really help out the special teams, and hopefully we can get Gunnar Olszewski the hell out of Pittsburgh. And then also, speaking of special teams here, Pressley Harvin III, the punter, he's been out the last 2 weeks with a hamstring issue. He's trending towards a Week 7 return as well. The Steelers have released the punter for the last couple of weeks, Brad Wing, who kind of came in relief for Harvin. The fact that they have released him tells me that Pressley Harvin is going to be just fine and he's going to be ready to go in Week 7. And then also some last bit of news here. Andrew Filipponi reported today that Matt Canada's job is officially safe heading into the bye here in Week 6. Apparently the win over the Baltimore Ravens was enough for him to keep his job. I think if the Steelers end up losing that football game, and listen, let's face it, that offense was not moving the football for about 3.5 quarters. If they end up losing that football game, he's probably not still the offensive coordinator for the black and gold. If you guys watched our video yesterday, I would have told you that I was still an advocate of firing Matt Canada because, listen, the offense was not good last week. It hasn't been good all season to this point, and I would have still rather had somebody like a Mike Sullivan or Glenn Thomas come in and be the interim offensive coordinator over a guy like Matt Canada. But hopefully Matt can figure things out in the second half of the season. But just call me skeptical that he actually will. Now predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will the Steelers regret keeping Matt Canada past the bye week? Type yes or type no. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. And then also we have updated here at Chat Sports our NFL power rankings here heading into Week 6. So if you want to see where the Steelers stack up among NFL teams here after their win versus the Baltimore Ravens, they are first place in the AFC North. So if you want to see where we rank the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to put the link to that in the comments and description of today's video. And that's going to be it for today's show, guys. Really do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you click that subscribe button for me. Right now, join our movement here at Steelers Talk. We have added over 1,000 subscribers in just a week, guys. We are absolutely crushing it here at Steelers Talk, and that's all thanks to you. Thank you to everybody that has joined our family, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. And until then, here we go, Steelers.